in the series of Global New York Export Assistance webinars. I'm Lennox Ruiz, Vice President for Global New York. Each webinar in the series will begin with a brief overview of the Global New York programs and services and features one or more of our foreign office representatives. Each program will finish with a Q&A session. On behalf of our Global New York team, I thank each of you for being here today with us, and we are pleased to be able to welcome those of you who have been with us before, as well as those who are new to the Global New York connection and relationship. Today's webinar will focus on Brexit and entitled Brexit Policy Explainer. And by extension of today's spotlight discussion on Brexit, we particularly want to speak to your interest as to how we can help grow your company in Europe and other international markets. I'm pleased to acknowledge my fellow Global New York professionals who are based here in New York City, as well as the various New York State regions around the state. Particular thanks to Maggie Cunningham and Cherry Madge for organizing this event for us today. Also like to acknowledge my fellow co-presenters and directors of our Empire State Development Europe office, Ms. Barbara Grunwald and Mr. Dylan Yates. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Everyone will be muted during the presentations except for the speakers. Today's webinar will be recorded and posted on the Global New York website for your access after the session via internet link. We would like very much to hear from you during the session. So if you have a question for our speaker or for our Global New York program staff or regional representatives, please feel free to send it through the chat tab at the bottom of your screen. We will be answering your questions at the end of the presentation. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we will be sure to follow up with you afterwards. Furthermore, we would appreciate it very much if you would encourage others to view the webinar series that we present, and the information here can be shared with others, and that will certainly be welcome. As indicated in the agenda on your screen, I will begin with a brief introduction about Global New York, which will answer many of your questions as to how we can help your business to grow internationally by accessing the available New York State resources to help achieve your objectives. Immediately after my presentation will be followed by our Foreign Director, Ms. Barbara Grunwald, and my colleague Dylan Yates, who together bring a wealth of knowledge and on-the-ground experience in helping companies in the UK and Europe. I promise that will be quite interesting and informative. So let's get started. Who are we and why do we do what we do? And how can we help your business to export? Global New York is New York's connection to the world. We consider ourselves the tip of the spear, looking worldly, and our key mandate is to help New York small businesses to export their products and services globally. And on the other side of our work includes assisting foreign companies who are interested in locating in the US. We help them to consider New York as the choice location for their operations. Global New York is part of Empire State Development. Empire State Development is the key agency for economic development throughout New York State. For the purpose of economic development, the state is divided into 10 economic development regions. As shown on the screen, you'll see that New York State is divided into 10 regions. Each of these regions is staffed with economic development professionals who on a daily basis work with their local communities, EDOs and partners in economic development to help spur economic activity, all with the intent of creating and retaining jobs throughout New York State. As part of Empire State Development, Global New York, we're headquartered here in New York City, with staff also located in those various regional offices who also work with our small business community to provide access to resources for exporting. So a quick facts. We like to begin by giving a perspective on how the world operates. Well, even with our 330 plus million population in the US, that only accounts for 4% of the world's population, just about 4%. It means that 95% of the world's population and over 70% of the world's purchasing power resides outside the United States. Trade accounts for over 60% of the world's trillion-dollar economy, upwards of a range of almost $88 trillion. Exporting companies, we do know, grow faster than non-exporting companies. As a matter of fact, the estimate is around 22% faster, and that translates into job creation and employee earnings as well. Even with those stats, we know that just about 1% of the US small businesses export. So what does that mean for New York? We know within New York State, there are about 38,000 New York State companies that are currently exporters. Of those, 94% are small and medium-sized businesses. New York State's merchandise export, by way of a stat, in 2019 was about $75 billion. Of course, 2020 was an anomaly year, so we don't focus too much on it at this time. But looking out to our goods and services, this gives you a sense as to the top 10 exporting commodities from New York State, ranging anywhere from precious metals and stones, arts and antiques, instruments, medical instruments, plastics, pharmaceutical products, and even aircraft and parts. So it's quite a diverse economy. What does this mean for us? Well, looking out towards the world again, global New York, we look at which countries are our key trading partners. And you can see on your screen, represented here are the countries to which we have our top 10 exporting goods and services to, as well as those countries from which we import our goods and services. Looking at this information, it's instructive that it leads us to deciding where we should locate our offices across the globe, and given budgetary allocations and the choices we have to make, those statistics as to where our top importing and exporting countries are located instructed us to have these locations across the globe. So we're currently located in China, India, Israel, South Africa, Canada, Mexico, and some representatives in South America. And of course, present today, our colleagues from our UK, Europe office. So how can we help you? We have 3 key programs and services, and I'll briefly describe these. This is intended just to give you a perspective as to the type of programs and services you can access through Global New York. You don't have to remember all of this information. It's intended just to whet your appetite, so to speak, and you can then contact us to get further information or go onto our website. So the 3 programs are the Export Marketing Assistance Service, the State Trade Expansion Program, also known as STEP, and the Global New York Grant Fund. I'll briefly touch on each of these programs so that you have an awareness. Export Marketing and Service Program, which is we dubbed as EMAS, is a program that allows our New York State companies to work directly with the representatives we have globally in each of those foreign offices, and they will assist in identifying manufacturers, reps, or sales agents for our small companies. And in each engagement with the foreign offices, you get a program personalized report on the market intelligence and assistance that you have directed. But highlighted as the first bullet there, it comes at a great price. There is no cost to qualified New York State companies. Who is eligible? We ask, of course, that you're a New York State company, you're at least 1 year in business, 500 employees or less, and the product or service that you deliver has at least 51% New York State content. These applications are available online. You can see there at our website, esd.ny.gov, and you click on the Export Marketing Assistance Service programs, and the information is there. These applications are very light in completion. It should only take a few minutes, and we encourage you to do so. The second program mentioned is the State Trade Expansion Program, also known as STEP. This is a collaboration between New York State, Global New York, and the Small Business Administration. We have been fortunate working with the Small Business Administration to have been allocated funding for this program through the years. The intent here is to assist U.S. small businesses to increase their exports, as well as to increase the number of small businesses that are currently exporting. So this program mentioned, we can provide you up to $13,000 in grants per year. As mentioned earlier, we have been allocated $700,000 for the Step 7, Step 8 programs that are currently ongoing. And for 2020, we received an additional $250,000. Typically, for the purpose of your engagement with us, we cover 70% of the eligible costs for the assistance that you require. Some of the areas in which you can use these funds, anywhere from trade missions that are led by Global New York, financial assistance to travel, subscription services, export training workshops, and importantly, we can assist in providing dollars for U.S. commercial services programs, Gold Key and the like. And that's very important for those of you who've engaged with our partners at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Website design, development of international marketing campaigns, upwards of $6,000. And in today's times, we also are able to provide assistance, financial assistance for virtual services, upwards of $6,000. And of course, compliance testing, which is usually required for many programs. So eligibility, again, we ask that you're a New York State company, but eligibility in this case requires that you have to be a small business ongoing concern, as is required from the Small Business Administration, and your content in terms of product should be at least 51% US content, which is slightly different from that we require for the EMAS program, in that we require New York State content, but for the purpose of the STEP program, you're able to have 51% US content. And again, there's a fillable PDF application readily available online, which we encourage you to take advantage of. So just giving us a sense of some of the programs we've undertaken in recent years. As you see on your screen, we've had a multi-sector trade missions to Mexico, to Israel, to MedTech China. Just recently completed the Digital Hanover Messe Trade Show. We had 13 New York State companies participate there this month. And upcoming, there's a virtual trade mission to India, and that's coming up next month, World Trade Month. We encourage you to take a look at that application on our website as well. And there's an upcoming trade mission, virtual trade mission to Mexico in June. And we have a multi-sector planned mission to Canada, which really would be more or less a matchmaking event upcoming in September. We encourage you to take advantage of these. And the third program would be the Global New York Grants Fund. This started back in 2016. We're currently able to assist companies, small New York State companies, to increase exports and create jobs. Currently, the program is on hold, but we anticipate to reinstate it within the next month or two. But under this program, you can have grants for for-profit companies, ranging from $10,000 to $25,000 with a 50% cash match, 51% product value within New York State, and of course, being a small company under 500 employees in New York is important. And what's exciting about this particular program, it allows funding for not-for-profit. So those of you who are representing not-for-profit and EDOs today, please know that when this program is reinstated, we'll be able to provide grants anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 for not-for-profit organizations, with allowing one per year with a 40% cash match. And the range of assistance and activities can be anywhere from market customization, export education, trade shows, as mentioned before, market certification, and for the not-for-profit to undertake trade missions, events, trade events, and trade education for your constituent companies. So that's a brief enticement for New York State's Global New York and the types of assistance we can provide you. We encourage you again to go to the website and view those applications, fill those out, and get us onto us. But without further ado, it is my great honor to pass the rein on to Ms. Barbara Grunwald and Mr. Yates, Dylan Yates, to present on the Brexit policy explainer, the main event for today. And then following this, we will open up for the Q&A period, for which we look forward to receiving your questions as the presentation proceeds. Please feel free to type in your questions in the chat area. And without further ado, Barbara, I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to Lennox and Maggie and the whole team in New York for organizing this. So my name is Barbara Grunewald. I'm the director of the European Office of Empire State Development, and as Lennox already mentioned, I'm here joined by my colleague Dylan Yates, our senior analyst here in Europe, who is our trade specialist and doing an amazing job, like looking after our New York State companies that are looking to expand and trade into Europe. So, as Lennox already said, we're dedicating this session today to the Brexit situation that you all know happened at the beginning of this year. So the UK has now left the EU for good, and that obviously brings some changes in the trade situation. And I think it's because of this changed relationship that it's useful for prospective US exporter to understand a bit better what that means, what kind of impact that has for you, and how it would affect any trade that you are already doing or envisaging to do in the future. So we've put together a little presentation to kind of give you a brief background on the different blocks that we have here in Europe. Then the Brexit overview and timeline, just to kind of recap where we are, how this all even happened. And then the really interesting part for you, the UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement summary that has been in place since the 1st of January this year, as well as the implications that might have for you and what kind of things you should consider, in your future relationship trading with Europe as a whole. So let's look at a brief overview of the different economic blocks that we have here in Europe. So the EU was first established in 1958 after World War II to unite Europe and promote peace and economic stability. There are 6 original countries who founded the EU. That was Belgium, West Germany at the time, France, Italy, Luxembourg, and Holland. In the meantime, the EU has gained 22 additional members. 5 countries are at the moment engaged in negotiations to join the EU, and the UK is that one big country that has decided to leave. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're having this conversation today. What's interesting in terms of the policy areas that make up the constitution of the EU, it covers on the one hand the European communities, the foreign and security policy, as well as justice and home affairs. So these are really the 3 pillars of the EU. But apart from the EU, there's also 2 other blocks in Europe that are important and interesting. So The European Economic Area is actually the biggest bloc because it contains all 27 members of the EU, plus Iceland, Norway, and Sweden, and Liechtenstein. Sorry, Sweden obviously is in the EU, it's Liechtenstein. But then there's also another smaller bloc of 4 countries, the European Free Trade Association, and that would be Iceland, Norway, and Liechtenstein. And on top of that, Switzerland. Switzerland has a bit of a unique position, and I myself I am Swiss, so I kind of know very well the background of that. It's interesting to see that Switzerland really is the #1 trade partner of New York State. So I always love seeing that and hearing that. Switzerland has bilateral agreements with the EU. So we literally have pretty much the same rights and all the same kind of free trade agreement that is established throughout the EU. We also have that with the United Kingdom now. So interestingly, as soon as Brexit happened, Switzerland and the UK started negotiating, and which means that kind of the relationship remains exactly the same as it was before when the UK was still part of the EU. Another interesting aspect of the EU is that obviously there's a currency union where 19 of the 27 members have adopted the euro as their national currency. What's also interesting is that there are 8 members who still have their own. So countries such as Andorra, I'm mixing things up today. What I mean is there are 8 members who are not using the EU, but at the same time, there are non-EU members such as Andorra, Monaco, and the Vatican who are not part of the EU, but they do use the euro. So that's a kind of interesting tidbit to consider. It's important to mention that there is no fiscal union in place. And each country is free to implement their own judicial and legislative system. So that means that there are 2 sets of regulations. One is the EU regulation, which really sets the bar. And then each country is allowed, EU member state is allowed to set their own regulations and policies, which are obviously most of the time kind of above or higher than what the EU asks for. So, for example, when we do the trade request, so when you hand in an EMAS request and we help you kind of assess the market, that's something we always take into consideration and always give you information on. So both the EU regulation, but then also the specific market that you are targeting. So at the heart of the EU are 4 key principles, and that is the free movement of goods, services, capital, and labor. So let's have a quick look at each one of them. In terms of the goods, the free movement promotes bilateral trade by removing tariffs and non-tariff barriers. So you'll see the importance of that when we talk about Brexit in a little while. For services, the cross-border trade is facilitated by alleviating market access restrictions. That means that there are some non-tariff barriers, such as certification requirements, say for accountants, for example, where it's a very specific kind of service, but they really are minimal. And a lot of the service kind of industry is freely regulated. Another example of that are nurses and architects, where there are no restrictions at all. So that's always 2 examples that we like to mention to show how services kind of work across the borders. Then when it comes to capital, the EU supports the integration of an access to financial markets. This means that capital can be moved across borders and transactions such as securities, investments, or acquisition of capital or credit are facilitated. Then a really important one is the free movement of labor. So it's a big advantage of the EU that the citizens really can move and work across borders. So as an EU citizen, you can at any time just up yourself and go to a different EU country and establish yourself there looking for a job. And so that really is facilitated between EU countries. And that's one of the things that Brexit really has obviously had an impact on, because there are a lot of EU citizens in the UK, and it has kind of changed a little bit how people view being here or staying here. And there has been quite a bit of movement in terms of people moving back to their own country or to a different country. Then a very important mandate for the EU is the negotiation of free trade agreements with other regions and countries on behalf of all member states. So that means once a free trade agreement is in place, that it guarantees equal treatment of all member states vis-a-vis the trade partner. So here you can see a picture when the FTA with Canada, the CETA, was signed. And then the EU and the US have been in talks for the transatlantic trade and investment partnerships for years, actually. And it looks like the Biden administration and the EU have taken steps to advance it after the trade and tariff battle around Airbus and Boeing was agreed to be suspended in March this year. So what's expected really is that there is again a reapproachment between the EU and the US to come to a strong kind of trade and investment agreement. Right, so let's just have a very brief look at the Brexit and the timeline. So what happened in June 2016, I can't believe it's almost 5 years ago, after kind of already a long history of discontentment of the UK with the EU, the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, promised a referendum on the EU, on membership with the EU, because it was kind of, he wanted to stay in power, and that was his way of kind of enticing people to really believe in him as a leader and believe in the Conservative Party. And so he promised that referendum, had to see it through. I think a lot of people didn't think it's actually going to happen, and Brexit is going to be voted for. But by a very, very narrow margin, 51.9%, the Brexit was accepted. I remember to this day, when I woke up in the morning and saw the news, that I couldn't believe it. I thought it was either a joke or kind of I'm misreading something, but no, it really happened. And that kind of triggered a lot of, kind of contentious negotiations and conversations over the past few years. So in 2017, obviously Cameron, when Brexit happened, left, he resigned, and the new Prime Minister was Theresa May, who kind of promised she will see this through, she will find an agreement with the EU, and it's all going to work out, and everything is going to continue in a good way. And so in 2017, she triggered what is called Article 50. That's the start of the withdrawal proceedings. And that kind of contained a 2-year Brexit negotiation period with the EU. However, that proved more difficult than expected. And when no agreement could be found, the negotiation period was extended, first to October 2019, then to January 2020. And this whole period then led to, again, a change in Prime Minister. And Boris Johnson became the Prime Minister in 2019. And he said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to see this through. I think what kind of can be said, Theresa May was actually a Remainer. So she voted to stay in the EU, but then as a Prime Minister had to kind of take the side of, seeing Brexit through. Whereas Boris Johnson was a Brexiteer, as we called him here. He really wanted Brexit. And so he kind of said, no, if you install me as a Prime Minister, I'm going to see this through and we're going to do this. And he has delivered. We have to say he has really delivered. So basically what happened is that in January 2020, the UK formally left the EU, which left 1 year of transitionary period, when really all the hard kind of negotiations were going on. And it was a contentious period where it wasn't sure if in the end the UK is going to leave with a no deal, or whether they are going to come to some sort of agreement, which luckily they did at the very last minute on the 24th of December as a Christmas present. They agreed to a trade and cooperation agreement, the TCA, which was approved by both sides and then signed on the 30th of December. And then on the 1st of January, it came into effect. Yeah, Brexit has happened, and we're living with it. I think at this moment you can say it's not quite as bad as maybe some people expected it to be, but there is still a lot of negotiation going on here. So let's have a look at this TCA. I think that's really why you're here, and that's what you want to understand. So upfront, it's important to stress that although a deal has been reached, the level of economic integration is not as it was before. And what's really important is negotiations are still ongoing. So that means we are kind of in an adjustment period. Some things have been agreed on, some things have been agreed on, but not been taken in effect yet. And a lot of other parts still have to kind of be ironed out and being kind of signing an agreement on. So that means that the current situation, how we can present it to you today, is not set in stone. And it will change over time. And obviously, with us being in the market and looking at the European picture constantly, we can always give updates. It's something we include when we do trade reports. So you will always get from us the kind of latest situation or latest circumstances when you talk to us. Also, for clarity, I want to stress here that everything that I explain and state here goes both ways. So sometimes in the presentation, you'll see that we say from the UK to the EU, but it's vice versa. So automatically, it means that whatever is applied when you look from the UK to the EU is also from the EU to the UK. So it's really reciprocal. We call that the principle of reciprocity. Another caveat is that although the trade and cooperation agreement states or stipulates that there are zero tariffs and quotas, and that's a really important point because that was really the big kind of part of this initial agreement that needed to be agreed on and to have as less trade friction as possible. But it is important for you to understand that there are non-tariff barriers in place that can cause trade frictions. And these refer mainly to rules of origin, which result in non-tariff barriers such as border and custom checks. I'll explain that a bit later today, but obviously it also depends a little bit on the products and the services that you are looking to export to Europe. But basically, these non-tariff barriers, they're here to ensure that applicable tariffs are paid and that standards are met. And this will naturally cause delays at the border, although it has to be said that the start of these new rules went smoother than expected. So what I said earlier, that kind of Brexit it's not quite as bad as some people expected. The argument for that is there are different views. So it's partly due to stockpiling. So companies, once they realized we are going to leave, the UK is going to leave the EU, they really started to prepare. And then also the impact of the pandemic. So the COVID-19, really had an impact on how trading changed in general. So that might also be why there was less trade going on than maybe if, the pandemic had never happened. And then also, in a way, sadly, a lot of SMEs have decided to, at least for the time being, stop trading cross-border because it was just too kind of overwhelming to adhere to all these new rules, and it's a lot more kind of resources needed, a lot more admin that needs to be done. And so there are quite, we know of quite a few SMEs who said, what, for the time being, we just focus on the market we're in, and we're not gonna kind of do the cross-border trading. So let's look at the 5 areas that the current TCA outlines. So we have customs, duties and inspections, which refer to goods. Then we also have services and labor mobility that I address in the next slide. So for the trading of goods, a customs declaration will have to be filled in, which will determine the duties related to applicable tariffs and VAT. And also there will be increased inspection of goods to ensure standards and regulations are adhered to. When it comes to services, trade has definitely become more difficult between the EU and the UK. So areas such as consulting and business services have been impacted, and qualifications are not always recognized anymore. So one big discussion that has been happening in the past few months relates to musicians, artists, and models, because they have been really gravely impacted. They are no longer able to just travel to, say, between the UK and the EU. They're not able to travel anymore for concerts or for photo shoots. And so they need a visa now, a working visa, because it's considered work. And that's kind of one big area where no one knows, has this just been left out by kind of, because everything was so, had to happen so fast that maybe it's just something that wasn't thought of, or, the kind of history behind it is not completely clear. But I think it's probably an area that will be addressed in further negotiations, because obviously, especially for UK artists, it's a huge disadvantage. For EU artists, they still can say, well, we still have 27 countries we can go to. But for the UK, who has a very thriving art and culture kind of sector, that has absolutely a big impact. When it then, last but not least, the labor mobility, and I think I touched on this a bit earlier, it will no longer be seamless, because now visas and permits will be necessary for certain things. I mean, holidays is still possible for, I think, up to 90 days. But as soon as work is involved, it becomes a lot more difficult to go by, vice versa, EU, UK, and the other way around. When it comes to capital, so far, cross-border trade has not really been impacted, as the UK and the EU remain committed to ensure the free flow of capital. I think it can also have to do with the fact that London obviously is one of the biggest financial centers. So it's really important that there wasn't too much disruption. At the same time, the parties have committed to honor pre-existing deals when it comes to data protection and intellectual property rights. But as I mentioned before, this may still change going forward, depending on further negotiations between the UK and the EU. Another area that the Trade and Cooperation Agreement outlines are the area of standards, social and judicial procedures, new borders, and program participation. So now that the UK is no longer part of the EU, it is also no longer bound by the EU's harmonized standards. So we like to give the example of the CE mark, which the EU demands for many different things, but say, as an example, PPE or medical equipment, aerosol. So these all require CE mark, which is required by the EU. Now that the UK is not part of the EU anymore, they have their own kind of standard. It's called the UK Conformity Assessed standard. So it's not the CE mark. But here it really depends on, say, for a New York State company who wants to trade to both the UK and the EU, the CE mark will still apply. And if you get it from the EU, then the UK should still accept it. So Dylan has been looking into that a bit more. If we do have companies that are interested in that specific area, maybe we can have a question after the presentation. Otherwise, if you submit an EMAS request in that area, that's something we are going to cover in the trade report to really give you the information that you need to understand the situation as it is now, if you are looking at both the UK and the EU market. What's important at the moment is if you do have trading goods already that have the EU CE mark, it is still valid. So it's not that it's just cut. As long as your CE mark is valid, if you obtained it before the 1st of January 2021, it will remain valid for the full duration that you have it. Then for social and judicial procedures, the parties have agreed to cooperate to ensure public safety throughout the region. It kind of covers areas such as security, intellectual property claims, illegal logging and forestry, which Dylan told me today. I found that an interesting one. But yeah, so that there is still a lot of harmonization going on between the UK and the EU. Then, as already mentioned before, there are now border checks between the UK and Europe. There's one exception, which is the Northern Ireland Protocol. Actually, interestingly, I'm located in London, but Dylan is located in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. So he knows a lot more about that than me. That was one of the caveats that the EU stipulated. There can be no hard border between the Republic of Ireland and between Northern Ireland. And that's why at the moment there is free trade between the Republic and Northern Ireland, but technically no free trade from Northern Ireland going into the UK. So that's a bit of a head turner there. But yeah, that we'll say a few words to that a bit later again. Then at the same time, the UK and the EU have agreed to participate in various initiatives and programs such as Horizon 2020, which is on sustainability. So again, I think you get the sense that there are some areas where there really has now been a big impact, when it comes to border checks, when it comes to certain non-tariff barriers. On the other hand, there is still a strong relationship going on between the UK and the EU, and the UK is not just completely cut off from the rest of Europe. So I think that's important to understand. It's not a black and white situation at all. There is a lot of gray areas in between that really will I think come out even more as time goes on, and the kind of tension comes down, and we all get used to the new situation. Then we included kind of a checklist that I found a while ago, which I thought was really, really helpful. That just kind of shows what the difference really is when you look at it kind of right next to each other. As an EU member state, you get access to all the green ticks and in the right-hand column, and then the new EU-UK Trade Cooperation Agreement, where you see the red crosses and the yellow circles, that's kind of where there is a change, and there things don't stay the same as before. So I think it does give a good overview of, there's a second one, it covers kind of the main areas, and you do see that there is quite a lot of impact, and things have become a little bit harder than probably a lot of people hoped they would. So in the last part of this presentation, let's have a quick look at what this new Brexit situation really means for you when you want to trade with Europe. So although on the surface, not so much has changed for companies outside of Europe, depending on your export strategy and business model, the TCA does have some significant impact for prospective US exporters. So as we have mentioned before, the TCA has resulted in trade frictions between the UK and the EU, with border checks, delays, and tariffs where rules of origins come into play. So although trade between the US and the UK and trade between the US and the EU don't change much for you, it is the trade routes or the route to market, depending on your strategy, that can be impacted. So say you plan on looking at more than one market, you want the UK and you want Germany. And I think that's where it becomes more complicated now, because you can't no longer just kind of without thinking about it, use one or the other as kind of your entry point and then move to the other market. because the UK, that kind of has traditionally been used as a bridge into the EU, cannot, or to a lesser extent, used as that, because you would be faced with kind of double checks. So then you would have border checks from the US into the UK, and then another check from the UK into the EU. So that's probably the one big change. And so we say, you know, it's not that it's not possible anymore. And I think there are companies who say, no, but still, you know, it's we can make this, we can figure this out, maybe with a local partner, with a local distributor, we can do this. So we don't want to say, you know, this is not an option anymore at all. That's not our message. It's just now it needs a bit more thought, and it needs a bit more preparation. So basically, what we have kind of taken away from this initial few months of Brexit is that there are 2 EU countries that we see have really gained from Brexit. So the first one for us is the Republic of Ireland, which is an attractive new bridge between the US and the EU, not only because of access to the wider EU region, and we know that Ireland has already kind of extended their market routes into France and into the rest of the mainland, because of this kind of new unique position that the country has. But also what I touched on earlier about the Northern Irish Protocol, there are no borders currently between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So it could potentially be a loophole into the UK, although I really have to stress here, it is a contentious issue, especially for the EU. And you know, again, there are still negotiations going on, and it sounds too easy, and it's not as easy as it is. So it's not something we recommend. I think I really have to stress that here. Another country benefiting hugely for us, what we see is the Netherlands. And because not only the Netherlands is very strategically placed in the middle of Europe, and it has Rotterdam as one of the biggest and most important shipping ports in the world, but it also has a very welcoming business climate and a very strong relationship with the US and with New York State in particular. So we think that Netherlands can really provide a cost-effective alternative to export from the US into the wider EU. So this is kind of my last slide, and as you will have seen by this presentation, Brexit has resulted in some challenging circumstances where the UK can potentially be perceived to have drawn the shorter straw. But nevertheless, for us, it's really important to end this presentation on a positive note and stress that Brexit has also brought a lot of new opportunities. The UK remains one of the biggest and most important markets in the world, and Brexit actually might bring the UK and the US even closer together based on the long history, on cultural similarities, affinities. And I think the discussions for an FTA between the UK and the US have started in 2016. They are ongoing. And I think it's safe to say that despite all, the UK is and remains one of the most important and biggest markets for the US in general, but New York State in particular. So that's really important for us to stress that at this point. And yeah, we see it in the trade requests. We get a lot of interest in the UK. It's one of the main countries, especially also because of the language, which is the same. So that makes, especially starting to trade into Europe, a very good kind of first market to penetrate. And just as a last comment, here are a few organizations that can provide further information about, you know, the ongoing situation. I single out British American business here. That is an kind of a chamber, cross Atlantic chamber of commerce that is really, really active when it comes to trade and investment between the UK and the US. So they always have amazing webinars. They have great discussions on the policy and the trade level both. So it's definitely one that I recommend to check out, and that have been really helpful for us, also providing us with some resources. And putting together this presentation, we had a conversation with them as well to kind of hear, you know, what their perception is and what they've heard from their members. So yeah, I hope that was informative and have given you a bit of an understanding of what's going on. And we're here, like Dylan and I, you know, we welcome conversations, we welcome all the emails requests. It's a very kind of it's work that we love, because there's so much diversity. And I think what Lennox said earlier, the diversity of New York State is also reflected really in Europe, in the UK and in Europe. And we've had some really, really amazing companies that we got to work with and help to build up partnerships here in Europe. So yeah, we're here for you and support you wherever we can. And I don't know, I think to Maggie, or back to you, Lennox, for questions and discussion.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara. As promised, you delivered. It was quite informative and enticing. And this is the point at which we encourage you again. Please put your questions in. We have allocated at least a half hour, if necessary, to take your questions. Please type them into the chat box. And not only myself, Barbara, and Dylan are able to answer, but our colleagues across the state in different capacities are willing to engage with you, as mentioned before. And as you're typing your questions in, we just want to mention again the applications for the EMAS program, the STEP program, the global program are all on the website, easily accessible. They take just a few minutes to fill out, because the information that's requested, it's usually information you have on the top of your head. It's basic information about your company and what you would like to do. And as Barbara said, it's a click away submission, and we're willing to engage. So as we see the questions that are coming in, Mag, I don't know if there's any there. Let's take a look. Barbara, I don't know if you have access as well. Okay, what was that? A question being asked about Maggie, about the availability of the PowerPoint slides. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think you maybe mentioned at the very beginning, but we're actually recording this session. So once we have sort of the video put together and edited down for everybody, we are going to post it on our website, and then we'll send out the links to everybody. That would include, you know, the application links for the Global New York programs, and also access to the video, which includes all the slides.
Comments are coming in with thanks for the presentations, and Barbara, I think it hit the mark as was expected. So we await any more questions that are coming in. I know it's quite a bit to digest, but again, we wanted also to convey that not only here's the latest information and the opportunities that are within Europe, but that information also available here to assist your company in expanding in the European market. And both Barbara and Dylan are here to assist in that regard. Dylan, anything that we needed to impart as we look at the Q&A part coming in?
Yeah, I'm just sort of looking at some of the wee comments there. I think maybe Patricia's sort of left one. I don't know if maybe sort of get a chance to address that if you have. So just taking a second to sort of look at that there about the octo. Is there one more come on? Oh, hot topic. Okay, well maybe look at that Irish one afterwards. So I think you sort of mentioned there about a thing about the architects. So I think at the sort of last bit, you maybe answered that question yourself. So the required registration with the ARB. So I don't know if it's maybe a bit of a misspoken, but I think we'll just sort of clear that up. So it sort of comes to the EU's directive. It's the mutual recognition of professional qualifications directive. Okay, so what that stipulates is that an architect essentially that's qualified in the UK through a sort of certified school of architecture, that'll be recognized in the EU. Okay, they sort of said they're going to uphold that. I think what we're trying to sort of point out is this versus someone like an accountant, for example. Okay, so they may need to be entirely retrained, go through schooling and get that sort of several years worth of training and qualifications before they can begin to service that market again. So hopefully that answers that. I mean, does that clear that up any? I don't know if that's I'm trying to sort of read the comment there. I think the architect could not move freely. It's sort of more so about sort of applying those services. So I think they're largely unaffected with respect to some of the other professional services. So hopefully that addresses that comment. Yeah.
Thank you, Dylan. That's great. I was hoping that you're going to answer this one.
No, just
Brilliant.
trying to go through that.
Then I think the other one is about the Irish loophole. So what I said, and I did say, hopefully Dylan is going to say a bit more about that, because you live there and you kind of see it, firsthand, so to speak. What do you think, how it's going to develop?
Dylan, I was just going to mention, if you could get a little closer to the mic. I don't know how it's coming through for others, but maybe it'll be a little clearer. If you're a little closer to the mic, I think it'll be a little clear coming through. Thank you, Dylan. Go ahead.
Can you hear me a bit better now? Is that okay, Lennox?
Oh yes, much better, much better. Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's sort of a tough getting into this sort of Irish loophole one. It sort of presents itself with an arbitrage opportunity. So for anyone that's not aware of it, so Ireland's obviously the Republic of Ireland, should I say, is obviously part of the EU. And obviously then it sort of borders with Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. So this Northern Ireland Protocol essentially states that after Brexit, there should be this sort of customs formality process that sort of comes into place between Ireland and Northern Ireland. But because of the NI protocol, it states that isn't there. So you probably talked about this hard border and this thing sort of recurring and cropping up. So that's really what that refers to. Now, in lieu of a border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, there should therefore be a border between Northern Ireland and the rest of Great Britain. Okay. Now, I say should be because there technically is, but the UK government has sort of came out and sort of spoke about this, and they're not essentially enforcing it. Now that is a sort of a violation, right? I mean, and for all intents and purposes, they are meant to be doing it, but they aren't. So like I say, it generates this sort of arbitrage opportunity in the short term. Whether it will remain in place, look, I mean, I really don't know. It's been sort of a contentious issue around this, and the EU has certainly made clear that they're sort of not happy about it. Now, there's nothing particularly that the EU can sort of do to really enforce it, but what they have said in a number of updates is that they're going to essentially walk away from the table. If the UK doesn't crack down and enforce this border, it'll sort of harm the negotiation process going forward. So that's sort of a byproduct of that. Now, what I sort of mean by this sort of arbitrage opportunity, at the moment, it sort of looks like a bit of a loophole, but going back to what Barbara said at the start, and I can't sort of stress this enough, the stroke of a pen that could sort of go away. So I mean, I wouldn't sort of bet your entire export strategy around, just looking at the Irish market, right? I mean, diversification and all that at the moment. So yeah, look, hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if you want anything else from me, or if anyone else in the panel has any questions about that. I'll get back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah. Thanks, Dylan. Much appreciated. So we're looking at the chat box. I think we answered. There isn't any more that's coming in. We'll allow a 30 seconds or so to see if there are any more questions, but it seems that we're almost there. And I think everyone who has been participating has held on. So again, we encourage you to take advantage of the resources that Global New York presents to you on behalf of New York State and our small businesses. We're here to work with you. As mentioned from the outset, not only are we here to work with you within the state, but in the flesh, you see, there's Barbara and Dylan ready and willing to work with you. All it requires is your application and to engage with us going forward. So unless any of our colleagues have any additional information or comments to impart, I'll give it a second.
I think there's just a new one coming, Lennox. And that's exactly something we talked about. We need to import a shipment from Italy to the UK, but our current broker is not able to handle it due to post-Brexit changes. So Dylan, that's probably one for you. The UK EORI number is registered to our US business, or does it have to be registered to a physical UK address? I just, what I know, it depends on the product, Dylan, I think as well, right? But I do think you need a UK address.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of read this here. So the shipment.
Because I know it from another request that if you want to import into the UK, regardless in a way from where, now you need a UK, because of Brexit, you need a UK address, or it can be the address of your broker, your distributor. So products are APIs. So
I'm not entirely sure that I might actually maybe need to sort of take this conversation maybe offline and sort of get a wee bit more information from you, because like there's so many sort of I'll say, you know, moving pieces of this puzzle, I guess, so many permutations. I think, yeah, look, I mean, we're here. Well, might actually do a bit better to get a active pharmaceutical agreements. Okay. Yeah, look, I mean, maybe
API,
yeah.
So I know because I just had a case for cosmetics. And so I know pharma falls into that, or the other way around, cosmetics falls into the pharma. And you definitely need an address on kind of the product that is in the UK. You need to register in the UK. It can be your distributor's address or just like your broker, someone here, but it has to be a physical UK address. You agree with me, Dylan?
Yeah, that sounds right. I think that sort of VAT process, I mean, that should pretty much be handled by the person in market. I think that's sort of as you go through the customs process. Yeah, I think, but you know, that stuff should be sort of done through the customs import declaration. I think that's the name of the document. It should all go through there if your documentation's in order.
So it's the case of finding a UK distributor. So I think, I don't know, Lennox, if you agree with me, this would be a good EMAS request.
Yeah,
it should be, yes.
So Mike, I recommend you to submit an EMAS request, and then we can address this in, you know, specifically and help you at least identify some potential distributors.
Indeed. These are the type of challenges that we look forward to. Indeed.
Brilliant. Okay. Any other questions while you have us on?
Yeah.
It looks like there was one question about the Irish loophole and if that's going to remain in the future.
Yeah, I think I just addressed that one. Shortly there.
Okay, very good.
Sorry, is there any other ones that just popped up because of that? I'm not seeing any. Or is that
No, I think it's that one. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah.
Where we said, Brian, it's hard. We don't really know, because we think, you know, the EU is going to enforce it somehow, but also there are kind of political implications that, you know, just make it a very, very kind of difficult and a sensitive subject. So
a comment was just made mentioning that this is from Patricia, saying that almost everyone thinks that on the line will leave the UK within 10 years. Are you willing to
Dylan?
forecast? Agree or disagree?
Yeah.
Dylan?
That's a contentious one. Well, we'll see what our Scottish counterparts do first, and then we'll take it from there, I suppose. Yeah, we'll not get any speculation at the moment, I guess. We'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
So Patricia, you might know that Scotland had a referendum a while back, and but obviously they didn't leave the UK. But it's said that they want to try again, and that the chances now are better. But I still think historically looking at it, and considering the size of the, different Wales is another one, the different kind of, how you call them, Dylan, are they countries or are they regions? I think it's going to be hard to break up the UK. It's
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history there, I suppose. But look, I mean, Brexit happened, and I don't want to sort of get into too much sort of speculation about these things because we can never predict the future. I mean, here we are here. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, see how it all unfolds. Well, let's just see a question. Mike, there another one. You get the last 15 minutes. Yes. So the recording will be made available. I think so. Maggie was recording that one.
Yep, we'll send around an email with all the links to everything, so that's all available for you.
Yeah, and then I see Patricia actually lives in the UK, so she knows this all firsthand.
And for questions regarding the application, so you can also call our general number, Cherry, 212-803-2300, and you'll be able to speak with Cherry, who would obviously direct you to the appropriate trade manager, depending on where you're located in the regions of New York State. So yes, indeed. So, okay, a quick thank you from Patricia. Any other questions? Don't be shy. This is your time, and we're happy to be here. As you can see, you're joining the Global New York family and team. So this is the kind of engagement we appreciate, and as Barbara said, we enjoy and live for. So we're here at your service. Okay, so I think any other comments from the rest of the Global New York team that are on the call? Anyone who came in late and would like to check in? Any comments you might have missed? So it seems like we've held the health sway for the entire time, and just giving it a few seconds to see if any further questions come on. But I think this will be a pretty good place then to end. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it. We'll be following up with you. Barbara and Dylan, a special thanks. Maggie, Cherry, for organizing this on behalf of the New York State companies. And to the rest of the team, we thank you and wish you a good day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you at the next webinar.
Bye.
Take care and bye.